So you need tins that aren't commercially available, and all you have is basic hand tools. We're going to show you how to do them and how to install them. So what I'm showing here is me removing the inner rocker panel. I'm using a piece of aluminum as a straight edge, and this piece was really rotted out, so I was just going to replace it. Unfortunately, once we got it removed, I noticed that there was a bigger section behind it that was bad that I had to rebuild. All I'm doing here is I'm using pry bars and a chisel to break this stuff loose. Sometimes you have to do it. I'm D, and this is Demon's Garage. What I'm doing here is I'm removing a large section of the floor pans that I'll be replacing. They're quite rotted out. They had a bunch of holes in them. Instead of patching, I'm just going to put new ones in. I'm not going to show you that in this episode. I'll show that in a different episode, but that's what I'm doing here. What I'm showing here, although in fact you can't see through me, is I am removing the inner rocker. I have to cut all the spot welds, so this way I can get that section of material out, so I can use it partially as a template, but I will also use it, I need to get that out so I can put the new piece in.
So all I'm trying to do here is trying to get the pieces so they line up as close as I can to where I want them. And basically all I'm doing is just making a template.
And just keep refining it, guys. That's, you know, the better you do here, the better your results will generally come out. You know, there are places you can screw up, but for the most part, the better job you do here, the better off you're going to come out. Now, see, if you look, there's a gap here. Well, I have a high spot here, and then it drops down. So what I need to do is I need to drop a little more out here, and then raise this up. It's still got to go forward. I'm interfering here. So we'll take a little more off. Take a little more off of here. You know, this is kind of how it's done. And see, I need to start tilting this piece back a little more because the piece goes like that. Right now I'm just kind of eyeing it. Don't be afraid to make templates, guys. They're kind of your friend when it comes to a lot of this crap. It's about what we're looking for. I want to clip that back. I want to push this back just a little bit more, so this way I'm closer up here. Move it forward just a little bit more. Drop this piece down now. And that's all it is, guys. It's just clipping and clipping and clipping, looking to see where you're interfering, and just keep walking it forward, guys. So now what I'm going to do is I've traced my pattern on here. I want a little bit of a flange. So we're just going to add a little bit of material here. And when we fold it, we'll fold it on this line. Sometimes this works, sometimes this doesn't. We're just going to move this slightly. We're going to work this edge. Not going to go crazy, we're just going to work it. And do it in little bites because it'll come out cleaner and crisper that way.
do it is like this. Take your dolly on the edge. Just work it like that. Before you know it, you'll have a piece. I'm going to cut these holes.
Now you're just going to trace that in a circle like you talked about in the welding video?
Yep. You ready?
Yep. And this is a plasma cutter.
Yep.
That goes really fast.
Yep. That's why you do it. It's fast enough that it doesn't allow the metal to distort. Okay, so to start with, right, so this goes towards the inside of the car, this goes towards the outside of the car. And all I do is just start these, just keep giving them a little
Twist?
Yeah, you're just starting to pull them up, because what you're doing is, as you add an extra dimension to it, it adds strength to the panel.
Is there a machine that does this as well?
Yes. You can get what's known as a dimple die. And what happens is when you use the dimple die, it basically just cuts them and presses them all at the same time.
And are they set to one size, or do you have to get different
they're all one size. You know, each die has its own size, and that's the only size it does. So if you need a smaller one, you have to buy a smaller one. If you need a bigger one, you need a bigger one.
And you're doing this by hand. How do you know how far to actually bend it?
You know.
Does it matter if they're not uniform?
No, not really. As long as no one can see it, technically it doesn't matter if it's not uniform. But, you know, because all you're doing is when you do this, you're just adding strength because you're adding another angle to it, so it strengthens the panel this way. So I've got that one started.
What are you trying to do with the banging?
Just kind of, well, as I do it, it'll kind of form it around, but it also kind of, it'll allow the material to stretch a little easier.
Can you overdo this?
Yeah, if you really work a hole, you'll make the material kind of thin, but if you're not going crazy, you know, it's usually fine. If you can get them kind of uniform, it's the best, but and there you go. You know, it's not perfect, but that'll add a bunch of...
Hold it still.
I'm sorry.
I want everybody to be able to see them, and you're waving it around, and it's not focusing. All right, so I see you put some little holes in this too.
Yeah, so what we'll do, and these are about roughly every inch, inch and a quarter, inch and a half across here, and these are also fairly larger. I use a special tool for doing these. You can just drill out the holes, but when you drill through sheet metal, they tend to bind. So...
And you were telling me that this top line here, it doesn't have to be perfectly smooth
because
you can edit it afterwards?
Yeah, what it is, I wanted to have enough extra material. So once I get it all welded in, I'll go back in with the angle grinder and then just get it to the right height.
So you don't have to be perfectionist doing something like this?
No. And then there'll be another panel actually get welded to this and the other one. It'll get, so this one will actually get sandwiched between. But like I said, take the angle grinder and we'll get it all nice and with the original outside rocker panel.
Now, what did you use for a tool to do these? Because I see you've got some different size ones over here too.
Okay, well these, I used the air punch, like I was telling you about.
Okay.
And that just...
And you have footage of that for...
Nope.
Okay.
But I can show you real quick. Okay, so this is the tool that I use to poke the holes. It's pneumatic.
All right, do it slow. Pull off. Now, does that do different sizes?
No, it only does those holes. Just like, right, so the other thing I was talking about was with the MIG welder. So what you can do is you have two panels.
I zoomed in here now.
And if you look, it's now created a lip or a step. So this way, if you have thin metal, when you lay it on there, those two pieces will have the same height. Okay, so this is another kind of hole punch. These are actually really old. As far as I know, I don't think anyone makes these anymore. If you run across them, they're awesome for what they do. All right, so all you do, so what this is a hole punch. And if you just go, and it, like I said, these are really old, and it'll blow a hole in it.
And you're using the wood so you don't dent the metal?
Yep. And I want to get it into the best place that I can. You know, try to get it as level and the floor, and then kind of take your clamps to kind of hold it in place and pull everything tight. So like that one, I moved it and it moved the whole panel.
And this is one of those comfortable welding spots you were talking about.
Yeah. Should need my welding helmet.
So you're just grounding that by putting the clamp from your welder onto the car?
Yeah. Yeah, well, you have to have a ground to complete the circuit.
I see a red hot glowy spot.
Yep.
Did you get it too hot there? Or?
No, not really. There's a bunch of metal there, and I didn't blow through, so.
Okay. And this is the MIG you're using?
Yep.
Right now. And you're skipping spots, it looks like.
Yeah.
So
What I'm trying to do,
overheat and warp?
partially, but I'm also going to partially need to pull the panel into place. So as I do it, I need to have enough spots so I can help pull the panel into place, like up in here, and get this real, real tight.
looks like you're just tapping that button to lay down
Yep.
the wire.
Yeah.
You don't want to hold the trigger because it's too much.
It'll get hot. So what happens is you can have what's known as a burn through. So if I just hold it there and keep buzzing it, all you're doing is adding heat, right?
Okay.
And it's pushing wire in there. Well, it can cause the metal, if the metal's really thin, to burn out. And you'll end up with a hole. So what I'm doing is I'm laying a little bit, giving it a second to cool down, and then going back and adding a little more and off and on. So that's all I'm doing there. Now, like, see that? Now, I've got a couple panels in, or, a couple of welds in. Now, like, here it's not super, super tight. So I can just kind of massage that panel in to where I need it to be. And then I can go in and weld it. But that's because I welded here and here. So as long as my welds are strong here, it'll start pulling that metal. It'll pull this metal in the center between the two.
Okay.
Instead of, pulling the whole panel. But that's it. You're also going to want to work this way because you're heating it. Normally what I would do is do the bottom, a fair amount of it, because that'll push the panel out this way and up. Let it cool back down and then come back and do this. Because if I do a bunch...
You're not leaning against where there might be some hot wire.
That, and what it is if I weld it here and here, well, this panel's going to get hot. Well, it's going to push. And then it's going to get all warped out. Where if I do this, it'll push up, but there's nothing holding it from sucking it back down.
Okay.
So. And whenever you do these, you want to get this stuff as tight as you can. So that's why you use these kind of pliers, welding pliers like this.
Oh, they're a welding plier.
Yeah.
Do they have a special name or just welding plier?
They're kind of like a vice grip, actually. While you're right, so I got it all welded in. All the spot welds done. Now what I was doing was, while the panel was still hot, I have a recess here.
Okay.
So it cones in a little bit, and all I was doing was just knocking it in. So then I could just tack that, pick a couple of spots and just start tacking this part of that panel onto there.
Okay.
That's all.
And your welds don't look uniform, and that's fine because you're going to grind them down.
Yeah.
So again, it's not something you have to be super fussy about.
No, not in this case. What it is, you're just trying to get enough heat to that base metal and then kind of build up a bubble and then connect that bubble to your other piece.
Now I see that there's wires behind this. Do you have to be careful when you're welding
Yes.
with wires?
Yeah. Those all go back to the tail lights and everything in the back. I just make sure that they're up out of the way. But generally you're not putting a whole lot of heat into it. You're doing one little spot, so as long as your wires aren't real close to it, and it's not like you're just running a whole bead down there where everything's gonna get really hot. You weld it a little bit, you give it a second, you go 2-3 holes up, you weld it, or every other hole, and then you just keep working up, and then come back through and do them again.
Now
And this way you can kind of pull them
I
in.
see some of your metal's not quite flush. Is that okay?
Yeah.
I mean, granted, this is a hidden panel, so it's also got less fuss because of it.
Yeah, but you kind of want to have them really close. This panel's a little warped to begin with, so I got it relatively close, and I got this relatively close. But like I said, what you're doing is you're taking your base, and if there's a little bit of a gap, if you start a weld here and you get a good penetration, you can kind of build it up and then connect it. Ideally, you'd want them flush. I also used the one set of welder's pliers like this.
Hang on, hold this up again for a second. So they've got a curl to kind of hold on to the metal.
Yeah, and these are actually for doing sheet metal and stuff. So, because this has a piece that comes down, you put them on upside down.
Which can't see through your leg. Our eyesight's not that good.
Yeah. And put them like that, and it'll pull the two pieces together.
Okay.
And then weld in between.
I got a nice zoom into that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just trying to...
Yeah, and then I kind of did the same thing up here. Once you get, what I'll do is these will all get ground flush, and then I'll go in and recheck and make sure I don't have any big hollows or anything where I have to go back in and touch them up.
So you would grind this even though it's not going to be seen, just so you can check your weld?
On this panel I will, because there's another panel that'll come up here and sit flush up where all these welds are, and then more welds will be put to this panel to the other panel.
But the weld's not actually weaker if you left it like it is.
No.
If someone say they didn't care what it looked like, just that it was functionable.
Yeah.
So I'm coming over to inspect your work. How do I know how good it is?
But as you're doing, you need to pay attention as you're doing it, you know.
Well, yeah,
because
but
ultimately
as
it comes
down
down.
the vehicle. I'm not doing it. You're doing it.
No,
At
if you're
least I should know how to inspect the weld.
well, you know, if you don't know what you're doing as far as this is concerned, you shouldn't be doing it for other people or charging them.
You're not charging me.
Yeah, you're right. It's costing me. But yeah, you know, if you're paying attention as you're doing it, and you do a weld and you see that panel's still loose, it means that you didn't get penetration. So on the bottom, everywhere there's a weld, you got to get underneath there and either hit it with some sandpaper, hit it with a wire brush or something, because all that heat you just put into it basically burnt all the paint off.
Okay.
So you'll have that bit of paint there. Well, if you don't go back in and clean it off and put some fresh paint on it, it's going to rust out in those spots.
Okay, so it's not just that it's dark in here, you've painted it.
Yeah. I sprayed it with rust inhibitor. It'll get a coat of black paint too, because the rust inhibitor also works as a primer.
Okay.
So this way it'll help paints bond. And I've got other stuff that I'll spray really good. I can't build this piece next because I still have to, and you don't have to, I'm doing it because of the amount of power, and I want the frame to be a little, as I'm putting in frame ties.
Okay.
So they'll come back and go back to the rocker boxes.
It'll make the whole car stronger.
Stronger, yeah. But the problem is where the seat mount's going to be. I'm going to have another piece that's going to come across here, which is going to tie to that, and then tie the two frame rails.
So it'll flex less that way.
Yeah, it'll hold everything a lot stiffer. Plus, it'll disperse this weight from coming up.
And I'm getting good shock, so this isn't going to be like a hardtail.
Yeah, you're not going to. Yeah, you're. That's all in the leaf springs anyhow.
Okay.
So all it's going to do is it's going to stop the body from twisting less. Now, why don't you get out in the garage and do something?